Hi, my name is Oro, and I'm a bit of a nerd.
Whoa.
Welcome, friends, welcome. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the books that I've read since the beginning of the year. My plan initially was to read at least one book per week, which is what I usually do, but my pandemic brain has made that impossible. So I have read 5.5 books, and so I will review them with you today. I'm really excited to talk to you about this one. It was hands down my favorite one, but I figured I would save the best for last and talk to you about the other ones I read first. So let's do that. The first one I read was Bluff by David Fauconbert. Probably not pronouncing that right. Sorry, David. It was good. I felt inspired to read that book because it takes place in New Zealand, and I fell in love with New Zealand when I went a few years ago. I haven't stopped dreaming about the place since. It is magical, and it's about travel and adventure, and so I thought the book would be grand. It wasn't, but it also wasn't bad. I'm happy I read it, but I don't think I would read it again. It does talk about New Zealand culture, the Maori culture a lot, which is super interesting. There's all kinds of folk tales that they tell you, and they talk about tradition, and it's beautiful, and it takes place at sea. It's a story of fishermen and this traveling French guy who met with them and gets on their boat with them, and a bunch of things happen to them. It's good. I would rate it, 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I'm happy I read it. Don't think I will read it again. I would probably leave it in one of I don't know if you have that where you are, but here in Montreal we have boxes now sprinkled throughout the city where you can leave books for other people to take for free, and then they can do the same. So basically it's like a book exchange club. It's quite nice. So I think this is one of the books I will leave behind, and hopefully it will make someone else smile. Moving on. Next I read Eric Emmanuel Schmidt, Concerto à la mémoire d'un ange. I will try to find a translation because sometimes I read in French, sometimes I read in English. It's a little bit all over the place. I love this author. It's not the first book I read of him. It was good. It's 4 short stories compiled in one book, and they're all a little dark, and there's some humor in there too, which is kind of my favorite. Dark comedies are my go-to. It's entertaining. If you're in a rut right now and you're having a hard time getting back into reading, which was my case before I read these 2 books, this one kind of helped kickstart the habit of reading again. I used to read a lot, and since the pandemic hit, I don't know about you, but my brain hasn't been working the same, and so this book helped me get back into it. Because they're 4 short stories that are easy to read, just the right amount of dark and twisted. I think you'll enjoy this, so it's a good way to get back into it. 3.5 stars on 5. Moving on. Then I read Hemingway, Across the River and Into the Trees. Hemingway is one of my favorite authors. Now, that being said, this has to be my least favorite book of his. I'm gonna give it 1 star out of 5. But that might be because I'm biased. This is the story. The main character is some army dude who talks about his experience. And army stuff in general, I have a really hard time getting into it. It's not my favorite. In fact, I dislike it a lot. And there's also a love story between the main character, who is a 50-something-year-old man, and a 19-year-old girl. Also not my favorite. I don't know, it's a little cringy to read for me. Across the River and Into the Trees is set in Venice, immediately after World War II. It tells of the passionate love of an embittered, war-scattered American ex-general for a young girl. Here are the great Hemingway themes: youth and age, love and war, and above all, what makes a man. I would have to disagree. If that what makes a man. The main character also calls his love interest daughter. So there's that. Anyway, moving on. Then I read Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Discours sur l'origine et les fondements de l'inégalité. Let's try that again. Discours sur l'origine et les fondements de l'inégalité parmi les hommes. Now, I love philosophy. I'm a big fan of nonfiction. It's one of the things I prefer reading. I love history and all that jazz. I find though, philosophy, especially one that was written in the 1800s or around that time, it's hit or miss. And this was miss for me. Like a lot of works of those time, they, how can I say this politely, reek of misogyny and racism. Let's just call it what it is. It doesn't mean that it's all bad, but it's heavy to read, and not because of the philosophy part of things. And this is the half book that I referred to in the beginning of this video. I only got halfway through and I was like, this feels like a waste of time, and it's putting me in a bad mood. So I didn't finish it. I might keep reading it later on, but after reading Across the River and Into the Trees by Hemingway, I was losing the momentum I had gotten from the first two books that I read at the beginning of January, and so it was taking me longer and longer to get through the books. So I put it down and I picked up this little marvel instead, a collection of speeches that Greta Thunberg has made throughout the world. A lot of it is repetitive because she does have a message that she's trying to get across, and so, you know, it talks about the importance of fighting climate change. It's good, it's inspiring, it's gonna make you angry in the best kind of way. It gives you hope for the next generations. No one is too small to make a difference. Even this very small book, tiny, I read it in one afternoon, not even. It's very short, but it's inspiring. And for that, I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 stars. And now, moving on to my favorite book of the past 10 years, I think I can say confidently. The last time I started reading a book and I couldn't put it down was when Harry Potter first came out, when I was 12 or something like that. It's a page turner. Listen, if you're having a hard time reading now or just in general, I would strongly recommend this. Honestly, I cannot praise this book enough. I finally decided to buy it because the book community here on YouTube was, this was a book that was trending. People were talking about it more and more, and I got curious. And I'm really glad I did. I can't remember how much it was, maybe $25, something like that. Some of the best money I've ever spent. It's, to give you an idea of how invested I was, I had to wait to do my makeup before finishing reading this book. I just finished it today, and the last 50 pages of this book, I was sobbing uncontrollably, and there were tears of joy and love, and it makes you feel warm. After the past 2 years that we've endured, I have to say this was very refreshing. It's exactly what I needed. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm in love. I will probably most definitely read it again and again and again. And I kind of hope they make a movie out of it. Yeah. It talks about kids and adults with magical powers. So magic, big fan. There is a strong queer element to it, so also awesome. It takes place on a beach. It's also a plus, if you ask me. Well, by a beach, into the woods. It's on an island. The way it's described, the way everything and everyone in this book are described is lovely. You fall in love with all of the characters, and even the ones that like you don't want to like, you end up liking them in one way or another. I'm gonna read you one of my favorite parts. There's no spoiler, but if you don't want to know anything about the inside of this book and keep everything as a surprise, then fast forward a couple minutes. But as long as you remember to be just and kind, like I know you are, what those people think won't matter in the long run. Hate is loud, but I think you'll learn it's because it's only a few people shouting, desperate to be heard. You might not even be able to change their minds, but so long as you remember you're not alone, you will overcome. Yeah, 5 out of 5. Did I say that already? 10 out of 10. And now I just want to keep reading. I bought a bunch of new books that I'm excited to start reading. Though I think I'm going to take a couple days break before, because I want to really savor, take it all in, because this was such a treat. Anyway, so those were my books for January and the beginning of February. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Let me know if you have any book recommendations down in the comments below. Other than that, yeah, have a wonderful weekend. Wait, no, I'm gonna post this Wednesday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I love you. I mean that. Goodbye.